Hey you, welcome to Selfish Me. I'm Cam, a business psychologist and a proud late bloomer who finally stopped living by everyone else's rules. And this is your space to pause, reconnect, and build a life that feels true to you. Because putting yourself first isn't selfish, it's powerful.
Hello, you. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, hang on, when did I start looking differently? Not in a dramatic way, by the way. Just in a quiet moment when you realize your body feels differently, your clothes fit differently, and you move differently. And suddenly you're paying attention to yourself in a way you haven't before. What fascinates me is that these moments aren't always about looking worse. Sometimes they're happening at a time when we actually feel stronger, wiser, and more at home in ourselves than ever before. So why can a changing body still make us feel uncomfortable? Lately, I have been noticing things. The stiffness in my hips when I get up in the morning, the pain when I do squats, and the lower back when I sit for too long. And it's quite interesting because I have built strength over the years, the confidence I feel in so many parts of my life. And yet, there's also that quiet voice that appears when I step in on a scale or when clothes I bought a few months ago don't fit quite in the same way anymore. And it got me wondering, what is actually going on here? Not in a how do we fix it kind of way, but in a why does this feel so complicated kind of way. And if you are asking yourself the same question, stay with me because today we are exploring the relationship with our body that is changing. Before we go any further, I want to acknowledge something. We all have different relationships with our bodies. For some of you, your body has always been a source of comfort and trust. For others, it might have been a source of struggle, criticism, or disappointment, or pain. So as we talk about body changes today, I know this might bring different emotions for different people. My experience is just one experience, and I hope you take what resonates and leave what doesn't. When I look back, I don't remember being particularly preoccupied with my body for most of my life. Sure, there were moments, the awkwardness of being a teenager, learning who I was in my 20s, but mostly my body felt like something I lived in rather than something I constantly thought about it. And then, somewhere in my late 30s, I started paying attention in a way I hadn't before. There are aches that weren't there before. My energy feels different some days. My weight shifts in a way it never used to. If I gain a few kilos, they don't seem to disappear so effortlessly as they once did. And every now and then, I put on clothes I bought only a few months ago and I wonder why I don't feel quite as comfortable in them as I did before. And that made me curious. Why does this particular season of change feel different from all others? Because here's what's interesting. I am not in crisis. Nothing is actually wrong. I am simply experiencing something that every human body does. It's changing. And yet, that seems to be enough to wake up a worry I didn't even realize was there. So today, I want to dive deep into this. Not to tell you how to love your body, not to give you a 5-step plan for body acceptance, because honestly, I find that kind of advice a bit exhausting. I want to get curious about what's underneath the worry. What we are really afraid of when our body begins to change. Why does some changes feel neutral while others feel loaded with meaning? And what stories have we absorb about aging, appearance, and worth that make these shifts feel so significant? And maybe by the end of this conversation, we will feel less alone and maybe more aware. But before we go any further, I would love to try something with you. We are about to spend next 15 minutes talking about bodies, and it's very easy to stay up in our heads while we do that. So just for a moment, see if you can check in with your body as it is today. If you're driving, keep your eyes on the road, of course. But whether you are, take a slow breath in and let it go. And just notice. Notice your face, your jaw, your forehead, the muscles around your eyes and lips. Are you holding any tension there? You don't need to change anything. Just notice. Bring your attention down to your shoulders. Are they relaxed or are they carrying more than you realized? Notice your chest and your belly. Notice your breathing. Is it deep, shallow, easy, tight? Then down into your hips and lower back. What do you notice in yours? And then all the way down through your legs into your feet. Feel whatever is supporting you right now. The floor, a chair, your bed. Feel the weight of your body. The fact that it's here, carrying you through another day. And ask yourself this simple question. How is my body today? Not how does it look, not what do I wish were different, just how is it? And keep whatever came up for you in the background as we continue, because I have a feeling we are going to come back to it. So what did you notice? Maybe nothing at all. Or maybe in those few moments of paying attention, you noticed something you hadn't realized was there. A tense shoulder, an ache, a heaviness, a sense of tiredness, or maybe even a feeling of ease that you hadn't stopped to appreciate. What always fascinates me is how much can surface when we simply pay attention. Most of us spend so much time thinking about our bodies, what they look like, what they weigh, what we wish we could change, that we rarely stop to ask how they actually feel. And I'm guilty of that too. And sometimes when we do ask, the answer surprises us. Whatever came up for you, just hold it too lightly. Because one of the things I have been realizing is that many of us are carrying around thoughts and feelings about our bodies without even really examining where they came from. We just assume they are true. We assume that if we are worried about our weight or appearance or the changes happening as we got older, then the problem must be our body. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the discomfort isn't about what's changing? What if it's also about the meaning we attach to those changes? Because here is something I want you to know. If you have been thinking more about your body lately, if you felt frustrated by changes or worried about what they might mean, you are not alone. And you are not the only person asking these questions. The question I am interested in isn't whether the worry is real. It is. The question is, where is it coming from? And I think the answer is more interesting and perhaps a little more freeing than most of us realize. I want to start with my own experience because it helped me see something I hadn't noticed before. When I look back, I don't think I spent much time thinking about my body growing up. And I think part of the reason was that my body sat within what was considered pretty normal and average. I wasn't especially thin, I wasn't especially big, I didn't stand out in any particular way. I blend in, which meant I could mostly ignore it. And if I'm honest, I wasn't really paying attention to my body that much. I wasn't fighting it, but I wasn't listening, nor was I celebrating my body. But in the last year, I noticed more aches, slower recovery after exercising, not being able perhaps to do certain poses that I could do before in yoga. And then last year, my work changed. I started traveling, long flights, different time zones, disrupted sleep, hotel breakfasts, client dinners, weeks where there was no routine at all. And over time, I gained a few kilos, which when you think about it, makes complete sense. My body was adapting to stress, to jet lag, poor sleep, and unpredictability. It was doing exactly what bodies do. But that's not how I interpreted it. Instead, I bought a scale. One of those smart scales that syncs with your phone and gives you an endless stream of data about yourself before you even say good morning to anyone. Weight, body fat, muscles, water retention. Every day there was a new number to analyze. And before I knew it, I was checking it far more often than I care to admit. I was weighting myself in the morning, sometimes again in the evening, wondering what had changed, looking for patterns, looking for progress. Meanwhile, I was also getting stronger. I was lifting weights, feeling capable, feeling more powerful in my body. And somehow, that wasn't what I was paying attention to. What I was paying attention to was the number. I was strong, healthy, still not satisfied. And that was the moment I realized something wasn't quite right. Psychologist Dr. Rin calls this beauty sickness. The way many women are taught to experience their bodies as projects to evaluate rather than place to live in, being observed and performing. And when I heard that, I felt uncomfortably seen because that's exactly what I was doing. I wasn't relating to my body. I was monitoring. Eventually, I put the scale away, not because suddenly I got the number I wanted, but because I realized something very simple. It was making me miserable. That scale was a bully, absolute bully. The number was affecting my mood. It was affecting how I felt about myself. It was affecting what I was eating, when I was eating, how much water I was drinking. It was affecting how I moved through my day. And that felt like a useful information for me to act on. But around the same time, something else was happening. I was noticing my body in a completely different way. I have endometriosis, and the days before my period, the bloating can be intense. Sometimes clothes don't fit. My body feels different from one week to another. And that's what's interesting, is that when that happens, I don't become more critical. I became more compassionate. I find myself putting a hand over my stomach and thinking, okay, what do you need right now? Not how I can fix this. Not how do I make this disappear. Just what do I need? And that feels very different. Researchers use the term interoception to describe our ability to notice what's happening inside of our bodies. The signals of hunger, tension, fatigue, discomfort, or ease. What struck me was the pain forced me inward. One invited me into a relationship with my body. The other invited me to judge it. And those are very different experiences. Then there was a moment in yoga a few weeks ago. I was in a twist and I caught my reflection in the mirror. Immediately, I noticed the rolls around my waist. And before I had even had the time to think, I cringed just for a second. Then I laughed at myself. Because of course there were rolls. I was twisted in half. It would have been impossible to not have it. But that's the thing. The cringe came first, automatic, instant, before logic had a chance to join the conversation. And it doesn't just happen in yoga studios. A few weeks ago, I was recording some content for Instagram. Now, if you have told me a few years ago that I would be regularly putting myself in front of camera, I probably wouldn't have believed you. Finding the confidence to do that has been a journey in itself. And honestly, I am really proud of how far I've come. But as I was reviewing the footage afterwards, I noticed something. A little belly, a small pouch, nothing unusual, nothing remarkable. And yet, once I've seen it, it was almost all I could see. Not the message I was trying to share, not the fact that I shown up, not the courage it had taken to get comfortable in being in front of camera in the first place, just the belly. And that bothered me, not because of the belly itself, but because I realized how quickly my attention had gone there, how quickly I had reduced the whole experience down to a single body part. I could see years of growth, confidence, and self-trust in that video, and somehow, for a moment, all I could focus on was whether my stomach looked flat enough. And then came the trousers. I pulled on a pair that I bought a year ago, exactly a year ago. Back then, they were loose. Now, they're a little tight. And my immediate thought was, I need to lose weight. Not these trousers don't fit me anymore. Not maybe I need a different size. My instinct was to change my body to fit the trousers. And when I caught that thought, I remember thinking, why? Why is my first response to make myself smaller rather than simply buy trousers that fit the body I have today? Researchers sometimes refer to this as the best before effect. The cultural message that there is an ideal version of a woman, usually younger, and that everything after that is somehow a decline. Whether we consciously believe it or not, many of us absorb that message deeply, so deeply that eventually the critical voice sounds like our own. And that got me thinking about something else. Sometimes I look back at old photos of myself, and yes, I notice my body. But what strikes me is how often I realize I spend far more time worrying about how I look than the photo ever justifies. Because after the initial glance, I don't actually remember the body. I remember the incredible food I ate in Sri Lanka. I remember diving in Egypt. I remember watching elephants. I remember laughing with friends, getting lost somewhere unfamiliar and feeling completely alive. And suddenly, the photo stops being about my body. What stays with me isn't how I looked, but how I felt, how I was doing, the life I was living. And that makes me wonder how many moments I've spent judging a body that was busy giving me an experience. Because our bodies don't just carry us through the world. They allow us to experience it. They let us travel, swim, dance, hug, taste, touch, explore, and connect. And yet, it is so easy to get pulled into evaluating them instead, to focus on how the body looked while forgetting everything the body was helping us to do. And here's what I find both infuriating and deeply humanizing. You can know all of this intellectually and still feel the pull of it emotionally. I know bodies change. I know aging is normal. I know a pair of trousers is just a pair of trousers. I know the roles in the yoga mirror were autonomy, not failure. And sometimes the uncomfortable feeling still shows up. That doesn't mean we are failing, by the way. It means we spend decades absorbing messages about what our bodies are supposed to look like. The goal isn't necessarily to make those thoughts disappear. It's to notice them, to catch them, to become curious about them. Because when you can see them, they start to lose some of their power. And what gives me hope is this. Research suggests that while many women continue to experience moments of body dissatisfaction throughout adulthood, something else tends to happen too. We start caring more about how we feel than how we look, more about what our bodies allow us to do than whether they meet some impossible standard. So maybe that's the invitation here. Not to love every part of your body every single day, but slowly shift your attention from evaluating your body to experiencing, from watching it to living it. So if we are going to build a more honest relationship with our bodies, not a perfect one, because trying to be perfect, that's already a full-time job. Here's a few things I have been experimenting with lately. Not in a performative wellness kind of way, but actual useful ways. The first thing is this. Spend a little more time experiencing your body from the inside than evaluating it from the outside. We did a version of this earlier at the start of our conversation with a body scan. Just once a day, for a minute or two, pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now, physically? Do I feel tense, tired, heavy, energized, comfortable, uncomfortable? This is what introspection is really about. Instead of looking at your body, you're listening to it. I've started doing this before I get out of the bed in the morning. And what I have discovered is that my body has a lot to say when I'm actually paying attention. And almost none of it has anything to do with how it looks. The second thing is separating the physical fact from the story attached to it, because those two things are rarely the same. The trousers being tight is a fact. The belief that I need to make myself smaller to fit into them is a story I've absorbed from somewhere. And once you start separating facts from stories, you realize how many of your reactions are actually responses to the meaning you have attached to a change, rather than the change itself. For me, the solution to the trousers was surprisingly simple. I bought new trousers and took about 10 minutes finding the same trousers, different size. And honestly, it felt like one of the most straightforward acts of self-respect I have practiced all year. I accommodated the body I have now instead of demanding that my body accommodate a piece of clothing from the past. And the third thing is something I have been thinking about a lot recently. Rather than focusing on how I want my body to look, I'm trying to focus on how I want to feel it. Because the truth is, how we look is going to change. That's not a failure of the body. That's the job itself. But the way we want to experience our lives, that feels a little more intentional. When I think about the years ahead, I don't actually have a picture in my mind of what I want my body to look like. What I want is to feel strong. I want to feel mobile. I want to be able to hike, to swim, to carry my shopping home, to walk upstairs when the lift is broken without becoming a major life event. I want a body that lets me keep participating in my life. In many ways, that's why I do yoga. I want to be 80 years old and still be able to twist around and take care of myself, meaning being able to wipe my bottom. That's the real goal. Not perfection, but freedom, function, and capability. And finally, something I found surprisingly helpful, body neutrality. Body positivity asks us to love our bodies all the time. And while I understand the intention, I don't know how many people who genuinely feel that way every single day. I know I don't. I know my friends who went through surgeries, accidents, pregnancies, they don't. So it's a huge ask to love your body every single day. But body neutrality feels more realistic. It's the idea that your body doesn't need to be amazing or beautiful or worthy of constant praise. It can simply be your body, a body that carries you through life, a body that gets tired, changes shapes, heals, hurts, adapts, and keep going. A body that doesn't need to be loved every minute to deserve care and respect. I am still figuring all of this out, and I'm becoming more curious about them. And I think curiosity changes things because curiosity creates space between the thought and the reaction, space between the body and the story, space to ask a different question. Not how do I make my body different, but how do I want to live in the body I have today? And I love that because that's one of the things yoga teachers would say a lot. Practice with the body that you have today. Do what you can, leave what you can't. And that just recognize that our body changes and we appreciate what we can do in that moment. Okay, so that's the end of our time today. Really appreciate you being here. We have a few more listeners. I can see the numbers of downloads going up. So thank you so much for joining. And if you are new here, welcome. And I cannot wait until next week. All right, bye.
Thank you so much for listening. It honestly means the world to me. If something from today's chat made you smile, think, or feel seen, share it. That's how our Selfish Me community grows. This podcast is about real voices and reminding each other that we are not alone. We are all figuring out how to do life our way, and you are doing better than you think.